A heated debate transpired at the Senate on Monday as Senator Raffy Tulfo pushed for the decriminalization of libel. But the lawmaker is only eyeing this for legitimate media organizations. What is at stake and how do present laws protect journalists in performing their duties? Good evening, I'm Pia Hontiveros. Welcome to your weekly political appointment fix, politics as usual. Our first guest tonight, Center for Media Freedom and Responsibility Trustee, Vergel Santos. Good evening, Sir Vergel. Thank you very much for being with us tonight. Let's begin with this. So your position is, yes, let us decriminalize libel and cyber libel. But Raffy Tulfo is talking about decriminalizing that only for so-called legitimate or legit journalists. What do you feel about that?
Well, there lies the trap. Because who is to determine who is a legitimate journalist and who is not? Mm-hmm. When you start thinking of making a distinction between legitimate and illegitimate journalists, you necessarily will think of a system of accreditation and certification. Well, that to me is the first layer of censorship. Mm. So I cannot understand why, if you ask me, I'd scrap the libel altogether. Because after all, the only people benefiting from it are precisely the people who are intended to be fair game for public criticism. The powerful, the rich, and the people in power, in authority, and in wealth. So yeah, scrap it. No point. Yeah. If you say that this is for everybody, okay, libel is not for everybody.
Oh. So scrap it altogether. We're not even talking here about, as you were saying, for legit or not even yung basta fines na lang. Wala nang jail
scrap it altogether.
Just forget it.
If you ask me, I'd look for some law which would even make the situation easier for practitioners like us. You see, in a culture such as ours, the people in power, in authority, in wealth, are always able to find a way to use the law in their favor, and that's what has been going on. So the law is weaponized to harass people like us. Okay. So long as there is such a law there, we will never be free of anxiety.
Two follow-up questions, Sir Vergel. No? First, you said parang layer of censorship yon, no? When you try to determine sino yung legit at sino yung hindi, sino yung tinatawag na hausyaw.
Yes.
No? At pangalawa, ang sinasabi nyo is, there is a way to find a law other than this. So let's talk about, can you respond first to my first follow-up question? Yung paanong layer of censorship yon?
Kasi mamimili ka kung sino i-accredit mo eh. So first, who will run this system of censorship? News organizations? Who will determine what is a legitimate media organization and what is not? We will go on, and we will realize that we cannot do this. There will be a sense of subjectivity and favoritism in whatever system of accreditation and certification that you set up.
Are you saying that is something that we cannot hand over to government? We cannot let government determine.
You cannot let government. No? You cannot let government. We will have to talk among ourselves, media people, how we should police ourselves. No, it's not for the government to do that or any other outside organization. No, in fact, the idea, the concept of press freedom, ang talagang intended na check mechanism dyan yung merkado eh, yung market. I mean, they don't like what you broadcast.
They
don't like what you write. I don't read you. I don't listen to you. That's how it is.
Okay. What about that law you were saying? No, we can find a law, another law. Like what do you have in mind?
I don't know, because I am not so sure that it is easy to find such a law. But you know, kahit wala ka namang libel, ire-red tag ka naman. They will always find a way to make life difficult for people like us. In fact, as I've said, the landscape itself is so hostile to watchdog operations. So always disadvantage the institutions like media and rights and freedom advocates, always. And the ones favored by all these arrangements are the people in power and in authority and wealth themselves. They are the people who have the means to bend the law in their favor. It is always like that. So any law that allows itself to be twisted in favor of the small people, should be scrapped. Yeah.
So how do we police ourselves? Do we strive to become better journalists? Do we hold ourselves to the highest standards all the time? In other words, this is not going to be, halimbawa, wala nang libel law, wala nang cyber libel law. Hindi pwedeng bara-bara, hindi pwedeng irresponsable ka, right?
Well, we will have to put pressure on our executives and owners ourselves. I mean, the practitioners should put some pressure on their own media organization to ensure that proper hiring and proper operation are observed. That's the only way. Because this should be a practitioner's game, not owners or publishers' game. It should be a practitioner's game. Kung hindi maayos ang palakad, the sanction should come from the practitioners themselves. The practitioners themselves, media organizations, NUJP, CMFR, and all those inside watchdogs, but always inside, from inside, never from outside. It should be from inside. We should be policing ourselves. That's right. Because what will I do if, for instance, the red taggers call me a communist or call me a rapist or whatever? What do I care? I am not one and will never be one. So what? They can cry to high heavens all those fraudulent accusations. But what can I do? Of course, you will have to reckon with the justice system. And if you have a co-opted justice system, still the arrangement is tilted against you. But you will have to live with that. That in the best in the ideal, that is only ideal. That's only correctable in an ideal situation. But in a situation like this, you just have to live with that. But what I'm saying is that what we can do from our end, we should, like for instance, police ourselves. Like for instance, put pressure on not only on the people we are constitutionally mandated to observe, watch, and criticize, but our own organization, our owners. I think we should.
Yeah. My final question and a very brief answer from you, Sir Vergel. No, my question would have been, what are the chances that we could decriminalize libel and cyber libel? But since you brought up the suggestion that, why don't we just scrap the entire law itself, libel and cyber libel?
Yeah.
What are the chances that this is going to happen in the near future?
It seems to me that the least that can be done is precisely to decriminalize libel. But if you decriminalize libel and at the same time make it a condition for a body that should determine who is a legitimate journalist and who is not, I mean, that is not decriminalizing libel at all.
That's adding another layer.
That is applying the law, unevenly. They're applying the law unevenly. And applying the law from the viewpoint of an accrediting or certifying outside organization, which I don't like to happen.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for being with us tonight, Vergel Santos of CMFR. Maraming salamat
Thank
po
you,
sa inyo,
Pia.
sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We'll be back after a quick break. Stay tuned.
Pwede na palang tumira ng tumira yung isang Juan de la Cruz na Kengkoy, pagmumurahin niya lahat ng mga taga-gobyerno o ang kanyang kapwa o negosyante para makapangikil. So is that okay with you? Is that okay in the name of freedom of speech?
Welcome back. This is Politics as Usual. Our next guest, UP Diliman Associate Professor of Journalism, Danilo Araw. Professor Danny Araw, thank you very much for joining us and good evening. You had an interesting exchange there on Monday with Raffy Tulfo at the Senate. Tell us about the statements you made and I think I'd be more interested in your thought bubbles.
Well, at that particular time, Pia, my thought bubble, if you want to put it that way, is that what is happening in the Senate. Because as Raffy Tulfo is aware, because he used to be a broadcast journalist before going into politics, our call for decriminalization of libel does not make any distinction between journalists, content creators, or even professional and the so-called non-professional journalists. So his concern regarding extortionists in the realm of social media, I mean, we can charge them with, the crime of extortion, and we don't need to bother with the criminal aspect of libel. So let me be clear here, Pia. When we call for the decriminalization of libel, it's merely removing the criminal aspect or the threat of imprisonment. So you will end up still paying, hefty fines if ever you get convicted of libel. So that's all there is to it. So my thought bubble is what is happening, what the minus the word that I cannot speak on national television.
Yeah, stop right there. Okay. Kanina lamang kausap ko si Vergel Santos of CMFR, and he was saying, let's go beyond decriminalizing it. Let's just scrap it altogether and then make ourselves or hold ourselves to the highest standards and be very, be very, very focused on journalism para hindi tayo magkamali. Do you agree with that? Scrap libel and cyber libel and then let...
Actually, Oh, okay. I'm sorry to interrupt you. But at any rate, yes, the abolition of libel is a possibility. But as you know, Pia, when we talk about, strategic advances in whatever campaigns we wage, we try our best to look for something that's relatively realistic and achievable. So the trend in many countries right now is decriminalization of libel, and even the United Nations has taken that stand. So I think it's much easier to get support for the criminalization of libel for now. But we're not dismissing the possibility of abolition of libel. I'm trying to fact check and to do research right now if ever there's a country that has abolished libel altogether. That would be something interesting. But I doubt if it has happened. So at least for now, let me be clear, decriminalization is relatively more realistic, even if there is no guarantee that libel will not be weaponized anymore. In fact, I can even argue that with a decriminalized libel regime, there will still be certain nefarious officials who are too onion-skinned regarding government criticism that will still file libel charges left and right, even if there's no basis to do so.
Okay. So, but what are the chances that we will see the decriminalization of libel and cyber libel? Dahil pinag-uusapan na ngayon, no? And let's not talk muna about the conditions, no? Whether it's for legit journalists only or isama na natin lahat yun, no? Ano ba yung posibilidad na makita natin yun in the very near future?
In the very near future, it's very possible, although of course, we have to look at the politics in the Senate and in the House of Representatives. Number one, there are pending bills calling for the decriminalization of libel. There is also pressure from the international, arena, no less, coming from the United Nations, calling for or encouraging the new Marcos administration to decriminalize libel. So the possibility is there, and it's just a matter of making sure that our legislators will really work well, not just for the media, but for freedom of expression and freedom of speech. Let us be clear again that libel affects not just media practitioners but also ordinary people. Sometimes even sources of information may be sued for libel, or bloggers and content creators just as well may also be prone to libel charges. So that's why the criminal aspect should be removed, even if the punitive sanctions with regard to fines will still be there. So the possibility is real, given the fact that there are those calling for the criminalization of libel. And from the experience of other countries, there have been cases where libel has been decriminalized. So we can take it from there.
Is this going to be, let's say, decriminalize na ang libel, no? Is this going to make us journalists even, is it going to make us responsible, even more responsible, more careful, halimbawa? Or is it going to like open the floodgates or something, wala nang jail, wala nang jail sentence, di na kailangan pumunta sa kulungan. Sige, bara-bara na lang. What's going to happen? Ano yung situation?
It's a double-edged sword, Pia. For the more responsible journalists, there would be some relief in the sense that the prospect of jail time as a result of critical reportage will not be there anymore. But yes, we do acknowledge the fact that it can be prone to abuse, at least for those who would want to go on shooting from the hip, so to speak, as regards their political and social commentaries. However, as Berhel correctly noted in the first segment, it's the credibility and their authority that would be put on the line, and they might fade into obsolescence if they continue to be irresponsible. That is the beauty, Pia, of self-regulation in media. If we police ourselves and we do not allow government intervention by virtue of accreditation or weaponization of the laws and the bureaucracy to repress our whatever's left of press freedom, we would be able to properly hold everybody to account in terms of practicing responsible journalism. So I'm not saying here that the decriminalization of libel will make journalists more responsible. The causality is not there because it's a multi-layered process of media literacy, proper education, promotion of journalism ethics, and all that. So that's how things are. But on a more strategic level, the bottom line is we have to decriminalize libel so that the chilling effect will be gone. So the causality has more to do with the chilling effect rather than media responsibility.
All right. Thank you so much for being with us tonight, UP Professor Danny Arao. We have one more guest when we return. This is Politics as Usual.
The political and corporate financiers of disinformation are hiding behind their trolls. They are anonymous. Ang nakopronta lang, usually yung mga trolls. Trolls who have made disinformation their livelihood.
You're still on Politics as Usual. Our final guest tonight, former Integrated Bar of the Philippines President, Attorney Abiel or Adef Fajardo. Good evening, Attorney Adef. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Well, earlier we were speaking to Verhel Santos of CMFR and Danny Arao of UP, and Verhel was saying, why talk about decriminalizing it? Let's just scrap it altogether, scrap the libel law altogether. Danny Arao is saying, and I paraphrase, he'll take decriminalization as a first victory, na baka masyadong malayo pa yung to scrap the law. What do you think are the possibilities in this regard?
Well, good evening. As scrapping the law or decriminalizing libel is actually just the same thing, because libel exists as a crime under our Code of Crimes, the Revised Penal Code, and subsequently the Cybercrime Prevention Act. It was included there as a rider and in fact increased the penalty for libel when you use online means or methods, no, to libel or to slander somebody. So it's the same thing, no? Whether we pass a solo law, no, a House bill or a Senate bill passed into law saying that Article 353 of the Revised Penal Code is hereby repealed, or if we pass a general law, meaning that we revise all the crimes, no, we update all the crimes in our Code of Crimes and remove libel as a crime. No? So those are two methods, but truly, practically speaking, decriminalizing or scrapping it is just the same thing.
Okay. So,
But of course, yes.
Kung sa bagay, no, decriminalizing meaning wala na siyang jail term, jail sentence, pero magbabayad ka na lang, parang may damages na lang. Okay. But, go ahead.
Yes, decriminalizing means it's no longer a crime. But the aggrieved party, meaning somebody who was injured by somebody else's writing or broadcast, no, can still go to court via a civil case, file an action for damages. No, it will mean a lot, of course, for journalists because it means that since it is no longer a crime, you will no longer have to undergo preliminary investigation, and if a case is filed against you, you no longer have to post bail, etc. No, which are really very tiresome procedures. No, so if it is just civil cases to be filed, or you will answer only to civil cases, that is a simpler and less tedious process.
And is that something? Well, you as former president of the IBP, is that something the IBP thinks should be done?
Yes, I think the current leadership of the IBP is also supportive of legislation that will, of course, facilitate freedom of intercourse, in keeping with the Constitution.
Well, how does the IBP and you, as former president, how do you look at Raffy Tulfo's statements na kung decriminalizing libel, para sa ano lang yon, legitimate journalists, which will leave out those who are deemed not legit journalists?
Well, actually, there is no such distinction in the law. In truth, there is no such distinction. When the libel law was enacted almost 100 years ago, where it was included as a provision in the Revised Penal Code, there was no distinction. You can libel, as an ordinary person can libel somebody else through the writing of letters, maligning someone through a letter, so that it now complies with the element of publication because somebody else read it. Somebody else read the bad things about another person. And you can also libel as a journalist or as a broadcaster. So it's a general law that applies to everybody. So if we decriminalize libel, we cannot say that, we will just give journalists special accommodation by saying that we will apply this only to ordinary citizens. I think we have to adjust. Personally, as a lawyer, I would say that libel, as it exists now in our Revised Penal Code, is really ancient, and it does not adjust to the times. So, for instance, if you are being bullied online, Congress can see fit to actually enact a law that will adjust to the situation, because internet now was not existent as 100 years ago, right? Yeah. So if we now enact a cyber bullying act, which will apply to everybody, and it's no longer libel as it is now known, or as it is now being prosecuted in this country.
So cyberbullying law, or for example, kanina sabi nga ni Prof. Danny Araw, pwede namang extortion, halimbawa, because if you're going to go after those who are supposedly journalists, yung pala gusto lang mang-extort, edi filean sila na extortion.
Correct. There are specific crimes that can apply to specific situations. But what we are saying is that current libel law, which is almost 100 years old, is no longer, I think, enough or sufficient or even applicable in the current situation.
Thank you so much for being with us tonight, Attorney Ade Fajardo, former president of the Integrated Bar of the Philippines. Thank you, sir. We've been told before, don't talk politics at the dinner table or the family reunion or in Viber groups and risk warfare, digital or otherwise. But we can talk about it here at this table on this show. Your weekly political appointment fix, politics as usual. I'm Pia Hontiveros. See you back here next Wednesday, 8 p.m.